I'm Andy Leon with Marlin Spike Consulting. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate absolute referencing in Microsoft Excel. Absolute referencing is an issue that sometimes comes up when a cell containing a formula is copied and pasted to a new location in the worksheet. I'll be demonstrating using Excel 2013, but absolute referencing works the same in all other versions of Excel as well. My sample file here has widget sales across 4 regions and 4 different colors of widget. And what I'm going to do is add an additional column here in column G that gives us a percentage of the total sales for each widget. In other words, it'll show the percentage of my sales that were made up of by blue widgets, or the percentage of my sales that were made up of by red widgets. So I'll start by putting a column header in here, and in cell G3 I'm going to enter the formula. The formula for calculating this percentage is to take the total sales for each color of widget and then divide that by the grand total of all sales for all colors of widget. So I'll type the equal sign and then click on my first cell reference, which is cell F3, my total sales for blue widgets. Then I will press the keyboard, the key for the / on the keyboard, and that's my divide by operator, and then click on the cell F7, which is my grand total for all 4 colors of widgets. And that's my formula, equal F3 divided by F7. I want to tell Excel to accept this formula now, but rather than pressing the Enter key and taking me out of the cell downward to the cell below it, or the Tab key to take me out of the cell to the right, I'm going to click the check mark up to the left of the formula bar to accept this formula but keep me in cell G3. And you see when I do that, it calculates the percentage for me. That's 24.878%. So that's the percentage of my total sales that the blue widgets represent. Now I can clean up this formatting on the percentage a little bit. The percent style format up here on the ribbon, that one will multiply it by 100 and put a percent sign after it, which I'm going to click that. I can also use my increase or decrease decimal buttons to increase or decrease the number of decimal places that I show the percentage to. So I'll click the increase button twice and that'll show the 24.88%. Okay, so that's my percentage sales for the blue widgets. Now what I'm going to do is take that exact same formula and I'm going to copy and paste it down to the next 3 cells below it for my red, yellow, and green widgets as well, so I can see the percentage of sales for each of those 3 colors of widgets. I'm going to use Autofill to do this. The cell selector that's around cell G3 has a dot in the lower right corner, which is my autofill handle. Normally when I move my mouse cursor around, it is a thick white plus sign when it's over these cells. And if I move my mouse over that autofill handle, it'll change to a thin black plus sign, which means that I can click and drag to autofill the contents of cell G3 down to the 3 cells below that, which in this case is a formula. I'm going to be autofilling that formula down to the 3 cells below it. And when I do that, I get an error. This is the divide by 0 error. Incidentally, this would have worked the same way if I had just done a copy and paste to those locations as well. So this divide by 0 error is a good way to demonstrate what absolute referencing is. So let's go back and take a look in more detail at the contents of each of these formulas, the one that's working correctly in cell G3 and the cells that are not working correctly in G4, 5, and 6. So I'll click on G3. That one's still working properly. It's F3 divided by F7. So F3 has my total sales for blue widgets divided by F7, which has my grand total of sales for all 4 colors of widgets. That one worked fine at the beginning and it still works fine now because I didn't change that cell. I'm going to press the down arrow on the keyboard to go down to cell G4, which should be my percentage sales for red widgets, and let's look at this formula. In the formula bar, it has equal F4 divided by F8. So F4 contains my total sales for red widgets, which is good. That's what I wanted. F8 is empty. There's nothing in that cell, which is what's giving me the divide by 0 error. I'm just attempting to divide my total sales for red widgets by 0, and that's what gives me the divide by 0 error because that's mathematically impossible to do that. The same thing happens with cell G5, which has F5 divided by F9, and with G6, which has F6 divided by F10. As it turns out, what's actually happening here is when I autofilled my formula down from cell G3, what it did instead of copying the formula directly was the cell references that were in that formula, which for G3 were for cells F3 and F7. What it did instead was it relatively referenced cells F3 and F7. In other words, when I was in G3, my cell F3 reference was a cell to the immediate left, and my F7 reference was the cell 4 cells below that. That relative referencing carried through to the 3 cells that I autofilled this formula down to. So in cell G4, the cell to the immediate left is divided by the cell 4 cells below that, which is cell F8. For my yellow percentage sales in G5, the cell to the immediate left, F5, was divided by the cell 4 cells below that, which is F9. In G6, the cell to the immediate left, which is F6, was divided by the cell 4 cells below that, which is F10. And because F8, 9, and 10 are all empty, that's what gives me the divide by 0 error. So what I need here is a way to tell Excel that a cell reference is to be an absolute reference, meaning that if I copy and paste or autofill the formula that contains that reference to some other cell, then it's still going to refer to that specific cell. In this case, that specific cell is F7. So that's called absolute referencing, and the notation for absolute referencing in Excel is to use the $ in your cell reference. So in this example, my cell reference is F7. Absolute referencing that cell would be $F $7 for the notation. So one way to do that is I can just click up here in the formula bar and just type the $ on the keyboard. That works perfectly fine. Microsoft has given us a keyboard shortcut for adding absolute referencing to cells, however, and that's the function 4 key on the keyboard. If I press that F4 key when I have clicked somewhere in the cell reference for F7 on the formula bar, then it changes to $F $7. So that was a quicker and easier way to enter those $ for that notation. Incidentally, there are different ways to apply this absolute referencing notation depending on whether you want the cell to be absolutely referenced when you're copying it horizontally or vertically or both. I can demonstrate this by continuing to press the F4 key again on the keyboard. I'll press F4 a second time, and instead of $F $7, it takes away the $ from the F. Press it a third time and it moves it from the 7 over to the F, and a fourth time will get rid of the $ altogether. So that will cycle through those 4 different ways of noting absolute referencing or relative referencing, which is back what I'm with here now with no $ at all, because sometimes I may want to have a cell absolutely referenced for horizontal copying or vertical copying or both horizontal and vertical. I'm going to press the F4 key one more time to put my $ back in front of the F and the 7, both of them. And again, I could have typed those $ manually, that works fine too, but I prefer the keyboard shortcut because it's easier. I will click the check mark again to enter that value, and the formula in cell G3 still works fine, still shows 24.88%. Having entered this absolute referencing for cell F7, now I'm going to autofill this formula down to the 3 cells below it once more and see how it works this time. Now, because I've absolutely referenced the cell reference for F7, which contains my grand totals, now I have what look like good percentages here. The divide by 0 error is gone, and I have some values that look like they're about right. Let's go through and take a look at the formula now just to be sure. I'll click on G3, equal F7 divided by, equal F3 divided by F7, still the formula, still works. I'll press the down arrow on the keyboard. Now it's F4 divided by F7, so that's my total sales for red widgets divided by F7. I'll press the down arrow on the keyboard a second time. Now I'm down to yellow widgets, which is F5 divided by still F7. And I'll press the down arrow on the keyboard once more to go down to my green widgets. Now it's F6 divided by still F7. So by absolutely referencing cell F7, I can now autofill or do a copy and a paste of a formula containing that cell reference, and the cell reference will stay on cell F7. So that's absolute referencing, and that is not necessary to do that unless you're going to copy and paste or autofill a formula that contains a cell reference to something that you don't want to change. So if you're not autofilling or copying and pasting formulas, then you don't need absolute referencing. And again, just to review, you can also use that function for key rather than typing the $ signs in for the absolute referencing notation.